In today's highly competitive AI industry, it's very rare to see major players collaborate with themselves. But that's exactly what we saw on the 19th of July 2023 when Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced a shocking partnership with Microsoft. Announcing the significant milestone on Instagram, Zuckerberg said, "Today, we're open sourcing Llama 2 with our preferred partner, Microsoft. This gives researchers and businesses access to build with our next generation large language model as the foundation of their work. Grateful to Satya and our teams for making this happen." I don't know what you think, but for me, this statement actually holds huge significance to how things might pan out in the AI industry a few years from now. I mean, we all know that artificial intelligence and large language models in particular are the future. And in recent times, we've seen major companies try to make huge statements by designing technologies relating to these areas. Now, before we talk about the paper, I want to show you some examples of interactions I had with Llama 2. And just in case you have a curious mind like me, I've put all the necessary links in the description, and later on in this video, I'll show you how to download the model and play around with it if you want. So, I asked Llama 2 to write me a poem. As you can see from our conversation, this model asked me to provide a theme for the poem, which I did. And here, I responded with a poem. It talks about a day in the life of a man from Peru, with long blue beards singing about pandas all day. It didn't seem to make sense to me, but then again, many poems probably don't make sense. To be honest, there was really nothing exciting about the poem. Although it did make me chuckle, it felt somewhat like I was reading Dr. Seuss. What did you think about the poem? Let me know in the comment section. Anyway, so I decided to feed the model with some random questions I found online. This particular question, at number 9, caught my attention. It says, "I have tomatoes, potatoes, broccoli, and eggs. What can I prepare with them for a lunch?" This sounds like a great question to test the reasoning abilities of the model. So, I copied and pasted it into the chatbot, and here's the response I got. Llama 2 suggested an omelet as the first meal option, and also gave a brief explanation on how to prepare it. As you can see here, the model picks frittata as a second option, and also gives a brief description on how I can prepare it. And for the last 2 meal options, it suggests 2 less known options in tomato and broccoli fry and potato and broccoli gratin. Looking at the food options, I actually think Llama 2 performed well in this task, but I wasn't satisfied, so I decided to try my hands on some other questions. This time, I opted for the question at number 6, which is another interesting question. It says, "Act as a tutor. I need help understanding how the quadratic formula works. Please describe it in easy to understand terms." As I did with the previous question, I copied and pasted it in the chatbot, and the response was very impressive. Right off the bat, Llama 2 explains what a quadratic equation is. It also gives the correct mathematical representation of the formula. It also goes over and beyond to explain what each term in the formula means. But I still wasn't satisfied, so I found a quadratic equation question and input it in the chatbot. As you can see, the task was for Llama 2 to solve the equation x squared minus 5x minus 14 equal to 0. And this intuitive large language model gladly obliged. First, it factors the left side of the equation, which ultimately led to the discovery of 2 factors. Then it proceeds to solve each factor and eventually arrives at the correct solution, which is x equals to 7, or x equals to minus 2. At this point, I was having fun with the model, so I opted to try 2 more examples. This time, I decided to test Llama 2's ability to translate simple words from English to other languages. So I entered a prompt which says, "Write the phrase, 'I love you' in French, Spanish, and Italian." And after a few seconds, it returned the correct translation of the phrase in the 3 languages I requested. For the next demonstration, I maintained the same request, but this time, I asked the model to translate it into 5 random languages. The reason I actually did this was that I wanted to know if Llama would repeat some of the answers from the last demonstration. But surprisingly, it didn't repeat any of the 3 languages I picked earlier, and it was able to perform the task as it translated the phrase in Japanese, Swedish, Portuguese, Russian, and Hindi. Of course, I don't speak or understand any of these languages, but I ran a check with Google's translation online tool and found that all the answers provided by Llama 2 were accurate. Overall, I was satisfied with most of the responses I got from the model, but I was really curious about what limitations it might have. So, I popped the question, and Llama responded with a list of 6 limitations. It mentions lack of domain-specific knowledge, limited contextual understanding, limited common sense, limited ability to reason, limited creativity, and vulnerability to bias. The last limitation really caught my eye because, as we all know, the issue of bias can be really dangerous. And from the research paper, It seems that Meta is also worried about this problem. In the demographic representation part on page 20, the company admits that bias in model generations may result from biases inherited from the training data itself. In addition, the research paper mentions on page 35 that not everyone who uses AI models has good intentions, and conversational AI agents could potentially be used for nefarious purposes, such as generating misinformation or retrieving information about topics like bioterrorism or cybercrime. This is definitely a difficult one to control, because what it means is that to take away this bias, Meta would have to completely refine the training parameters, which is a very difficult task. But nonetheless, the company says it has made efforts to tune the models to avoid these topics and diminish any capabilities they might have offered for those use cases. And on page 23 of the paper, Meta states clearly that further testing and mitigation should be done to understand bias and other social issues for the specific context in which a system may be deployed. In addition, Meta dedicated a whole section of the research paper to explain safety steps it deployed during the pre-training process. Critically, Meta and Microsoft utilized an optimized autoregressive transformer as the pre-training methodology of LLAMA 2. Basically, what this means is that the model is able to predict future values based on past values. In May this year, a group of experts from OpenAI, Google DeepMind, Anthropic, Microsoft, and other AI labs released a statement about the risks of AI. Surprisingly, Mark Zuckerberg's signature was missing from that statement. More recently, two senators, Josh Hawley and Richard Blumenthal, sent a letter to Mark Zuckerberg highlighting the risks around the early development of the model and how it can be misused if it gets into the wrong hands. Also, towards the end of the paper, we see that the authors of the paper displayed the result of a sentiment analysis performed for the model. Shockingly, they found that the sentiment of LLAMA 2 towards the right wing was quite higher as compared to the left wing, but Zuckerberg argues he has done enough to mitigate the risks.
Well, a lot of what we're doing is taking the first version, which was primarily, this research version, and trying to now build a version that has all of the latest state-of-the-art safety precautions built in. And we're using some more data to train it from across our services.
On page 3 of the document, Meta states that the guide is a resource for developers that outlines common approaches to building responsibly at each level of an LLM-powered product. And expectedly, it features some of the best practices and considerations that developers should evaluate in the context of their specific use case and market. Furthermore, the authors also revealed the mitigation strategies and resources that have been made available to developers to address risks at various points in the system. And they're hoping that it'd be enough to drastically reduce the risks that come with the LLAMA 2 large language model. So, how does LLAMA 2 do what we just saw? Based on the explanation on the official website, LLAMA 2 is a collection of pre-trained and fine-tuned open-source large language models. Obviously, LLAMA 2 was designed as an improved version of LLAMA 1, and right off the bat, we can see how Meta and Microsoft have tried to make it better. To start with, LLAMA 2 was trained with 40% more data than LLAMA 1. In addition, this new language model boasts twice the context length capacity of its predecessor. This means that the language model is able to maintain its normal cognitive ability for much longer during a conversation. In addition, LLAMA 2 boasts of a feature called Ghost Attention, which basically allows it to pay attention for much longer in conversations with humans. On top of that, the LLAMA 2 large language model has a good understanding of time even when provided with minimal data. Like in this example where the model was asked, "Who won the Second War?" It said, "I'm not sure what you're referring to, as my knowledge stopped in 1940. For this particular demonstration, the model's knowledge was limited to events that happened on or after the 1st of January 1940, and that's why it is unable to answer the question. For the next demonstration, the authors asked the model if the Earth is round or flat based on the knowledge available in 2023, and as you can see, the answer is spot on. First, it gives an empathetic answer confirming that the Earth is round. Then it gives some background information about how the Earth was initially believed to be flat, and how scientific evidence has disproved the claim in recent times. Then we have the same question based on the available knowledge in 1852, and of course, the response was very much different. First, it talks about the widespread belief among many people that the Earth is flat. It also talks about the major factors fueling these beliefs, and then it wraps up the response by talking about how the flat Earth ideology was not universally accepted at the time. Finally, LLAMA 2 highlights that as at 1852, many people were already entertaining the idea of a round Earth, and if you have a good sense of history, you'll agree that this intuitive large language model is spot on with both answers. As you may know already, a large language model is an advanced AI model that can mimic human intelligence. When you think of the most notable examples of large language models, OpenAI's GPT 3.5, GPT 4, and Google's Palm 2 easily come to mind. Actually, Llama 2 and Palm 2 have some similarities between them, especially in the sense that they are offered in different models. During the release of Palm 2, Google CEO Sundar Pichai announced that the model will come in 4 sizes.
It's a wide range of sizes. We've affectionately named them Gecko, Otter, Bison, and Unicorn.
Llama 2, on the other hand, will be offered in 3 models, each ranging in scale from 7 billion to 70 billion parameters. In the research paper, Meta repeats the same abstract as that I showed you earlier in this video, but reading through it this time, I was able to note some interesting points that skipped my attention earlier. For instance, here, they made an interesting claim saying our fine-tuned LLMs called Llama 2 Chat are optimized for dialogue use cases. Our models outperform open-source chat models on most benchmarks we tested, and based on our human evaluations for helpfulness and safety, may be a suitable substitute for closed-sourced models. But what made me really curious was this part where they said, we provide a detailed description of our approach to fine-tuning and safety improvements of Llama 2 Chat in order to enable the community to build on our work and contribute to the responsible development of LLMs. After reading this part, I was really looking forward to learning about the fine-tuning approach that the company employed, and also the safety improvements they've adopted. So, I delved even deeper into the research paper, and here's what I found. Just before the introduction section, the authors showed the human evaluation results of Llama 2 as compared to other open source and closed source models including ChatGPT, Palm 2 Bison, Vicuna, Falcon, and 2 different models of Vicuna. All the language models were tested using over 4,000 single and multi-turn prompts, and Llama 2's results were quite particularly impressive. In artificial intelligence, evaluation is regarded as a process of understanding the reliability of any AI model based on outputs by feeding the test dataset into the model and comparing it with actual answers. So, basically, human evaluation is a way of using humans to rate or assess the answers generated by an artificial intelligence model. Over the years, this method has become one of the benchmarks for judging AI models for natural language generation, including dialogue models. And it's refreshing to see that Meta has used it to test the level of helpfulness and safety that the Llama 2 chat model offers. Speaking about benchmarks, the BullQ dataset is another benchmark that Llama 2 was tested on. Essentially, the BullQ benchmark is a question-answering dataset for yes or no questions containing 15,942 examples. These questions are naturally occurring. They're generated in unprompted and unconstrained settings. If you check Table 19 in page 49 of the research paper released by Meta and Microsoft, you will notice that the authors tested Llama 1 and Llama 2 on the BullQ dataset, and surprisingly, Llama 1 was slightly better. Even worse, if you check Table 23 on page 50, both language models were compared again based on a number of benchmarks, and Llama 2 had some really bad results. Here, the Llama 2 language model with 13 billion parameters scored 21.7% in a mathematical reason test called AquaRat. Surprisingly, when the Orca large language model with the same parameters took the test, it scored 27.9%. But we probably shouldn't read too much into it because the model put up some very important performance in other tests. As you can see here, Llama 2 has a win rate of at least 60% in both single-turn and multi-turn tasks compared to the MTP-7B chat, which scores less than 30% in both tasks. The win rate drops to less than 50% against Vicuna 13B and less than 40% against Vicuna 33B. But ultimately, Llama 2 still outperforms both models. Impressively, Llama 2 had a staggering 76.3 win rate against Falcon 40B in single-turn tasks and over 60% win rate in multi-turn tasks. Again, it scored over 60% against Palm Bison in both tasks. And finally, Llama 2 had a win rate of over 30% against ChatGPT in both tasks. In summary, the Llama 2 language model outperformed every other model it was compared in the human evaluation test. But of course, we know the human evaluations have several limitations. However, after seeing how well Llama 2 performed against these language models, I was eager to test it myself. So, I headed to the model website here and hit the download button here. Next, I was asked to fill in this section here, and after filling it, I received an email with detailed instructions on how to download the model. Basically, there are 2 ways to download the Llama 2 language model. The method involves registering for access on the website and visiting the Llama repository in GitHub. Next up, you're expected to follow the instructions in the README section and run the download.ch script, but that's a whole lot of stress, so I opted for the second method, which is a lot easier. First, I registered for access on the website and visited the Llama repository. Then I clicked on readme.md. While scrolling through the page, I stumbled on the Access on Hugging Face section, and when I clicked on the Hugging Face button, I was directed to this page right here where I can download the different models of LLAMA 2. I proceed by clicking on the model with 70 billion parameters, and I was directed to this page right here. I accepted the terms and entered the same email address I used to register for access earlier on. Once I completed this process, I found the Explore LLAMA version 2 button on the down right side of your screen, which should lead you to the chatbot right here. So again, if you have an inquisitive mind like me, you can go ahead and register to use LLAMA 2 using the same steps I described in this video. Thanks for watching this video till the end. If you've enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more interesting videos like this one. And if you enjoyed this video, check this one out too.